Hi, Jay Andrews here with Laguna Tools, and today we're going to do a setup video on the KX24 CNC machine. This is a 2-foot by 4-foot machine, and it's sold in two different ways. The machine comes as a benchtop machine that you can operate on top of a workbench if you've got a sufficient size workbench, or you can purchase the accessory bundle kit, and the accessory bundle kit comes with a stand and a few other options as well. Today we're going to do the assembly with the bundle kit. If you buy just the machine and you're going to operate it on a workbench, skip ahead in the video to watch the CNC machine setup. Now, if you've ordered your machine and had it shipped to you, it'll arrive similar to this on a pallet with some straps and the boxes. The first thing you want to do when the delivery driver is still there is to walk around it and have a look at it. Make sure that there's no damage to the box or to the pallet. If you see any damage, don't call us yet, but do make a note of it on the shipping carrier's receipt so that there is a record of it. The second thing you want to do is to open up the box and check the parts. If there's damage to the parts inside, give us a call within 24 to 48 hours so that we can file a shipping claim there for you. In this case here, I see that there's some damage to the pallet, but the box looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and sign that onto the receipt as I receive it, open it up, and inspect the machine. Now we'll start off by opening the accessory bundle first. We'll leave the machine in its package, and we'll set this up first. Now what you want to do is lift all the parts out of the accessory bundle kit. Take the small pieces out first. This is our brush and dust shoe, series of clamps to hold materials down to the machine. And get these out of the box and out of your way first and lay them on a workbench. The last box is the stand, and the stand is pretty heavy, so I'm going to slice the box open while it's still in the outer carton. Just take a moment and open it, and I like to lift it out piece by piece because it's pretty heavy to lift out of here by itself. We've got the hardware bag, the feet, and other components down here at the end. Just go ahead and lift these all out and set them on your bench. Now that I've got everything pulled out of the box and up here on the workbench, I'm going to start lining them up across the top of the box itself here. And this will help me during the assembly process. Like these ones will be the legs. And I'll put all the legs together, all the crossbars together, and so forth. So now I've got all the parts of the stand laid out here on the box, and I'm going to identify each part for you and then talk about the order of operations for an easy assembly. The first ones are the leg assemblies, and there are 4 of these. You can identify these by like a cutout on the side here or a scallop side, as well as a little flange at the bottom, and this will accept the leveling foot. There will be 4 of these. You're going to find 4 of the short crossbars, and these are on the ends, on the front and rear end. This is going to go crossways. There'll be a top and a bottom, and they're all the same part. And then finally 4 of the long crossbars, and these go from end to end, from front to back. And then lastly, you'll find a crossbar that bolts across the bottom. And you'll see these all go together. There are 4 other flanges here, and these ones will accept the wheel for the mobility kit. And those will be put on late in the assembly when we can flip it upside down, put those on, and put it back onto the feet. Now locate the hardware bags. You're going to find 3 hardware bags. There's a bag of bolts, and you'll see a bag of lock washers, a bag of nuts, and then finally grab a 10mm wrench, and you'll use that for assembly. Now I've removed the other parts. I've laid out 2 legs, 2 cross rails of the short cross rails, and then the hardware. And I only want the hardware out that I'm going to use right now, so I've got 8 nuts, 8 bolts, and 8 of the lock washers. These are a carriage bolt, so that it has a square shank to it, and I will insert those into one of the legs, line them up, and I push them up through the bottom, lay the leg back down, and then drop one of the crossbars onto those, and they will sort of self-square because of the carriage bolt. Take a lock washer on each of those, and then finally run the nut down. You'll repeat the process for the lower leg, and then finally you'll repeat it on the opposite leg. Now I have the crossbar mounted to the leg, and I've got the nut, bolt, and washer mounted through the corner, and you can see there's a little bit of play right here. I'm going to run these down a little bit, but I'm going to leave them finger tight, and then finally I'll come back and tighten those down once I have it all together, and that way I can square it up. The wrench will work great, but it's a little bit slow. You may find that it's better to use a ratchet, and again, that'll be a 10mm socket, and that'll make this process a lot quicker for you. For the bottom crossbar, you'll notice that there are 3 different locations that you could mount it. There's a top section with 2 holes, a middle, and a bottom. We're going to use the bottom section, and we're also going to introduce this bracket for the mobility kit at the same time that we put the crossbar in. So you need 2 of these brackets, and then 1 of the crossbars here. I'll line the crossbar up on that lower set of holes. I'll take this bracket and mount it in place, and you're going to see that it has 2 holes that will line up with those carriage bolt holes, and then I'll run that bolt through. So I've got one end assembled, but I've left the bolts finger tight so that I have a little bit of flex when I go to bolt the 2 ends together. And then once I have it all squared, I'll flip it upside down on the floor to square it. And then finally I'll tighten those bolts down at that time. I'll install the leveling feet and the wheel system at that time. Now the wheel kit bracket that you see here has this large flange that the wheel will bolt into, and that flange wants to be down toward the bottom of the machine, or the bottom of the leg right now, with the open side toward the top. Now I've got both end assemblies assembled, and I've left them, again, finger tight so that I've got a little room to play. I'm going to go ahead and stand this unit up on the box. I'll bring one of the long cross members in now, and this will stretch from front to back. That'll line up in the corner. I'll insert 2 bolts from the outside, lock washers and the nuts, and then I'll repeat the process on the other side. Okay, now that I've got this stretcher on here, it'll stand up by itself right now. I've left it finger tight. I'm going to grab the other long rail and I'll bolt it on the other side. Okay, I've got this end assembled onto the rails. Now spin it around and bolt the other end on. Now you can see, even though that it's finger tight, I still don't have enough room to slide this one in. So what I'll do is I'll remove one of the bolts down at the bottom and swing the leg a little further out. Now that we've got the top crossbars in place, I'm going to put the bottom crossbars in place. So grab one of the crossbars, and when you fit this corner in, we've left these finger tight so that I can slide this bracket over and then fit the crossbar in between the leg and the plate for the wheel kit. Now that that's in place, it'll rest there on top of the plate. I'm going to check and see if I have enough play in this corner here. Even though I've left it finger tight, you may find that it doesn't fit. And if that's the case, which it often is, just remove one of the bolts inside here. I'd like to remove the top of the 2 bolts, and when I do that, it'll allow me to swing this leg over just a little bit further. Since those are finger tight, I can pull that right out. It'll allow me to swing that leg further over. I can slide that together, and now I can drop that bolt back in and put 2 bolts in each corner, and I'll repeat the process on the other side. Next up, we're going to install this crossbar, and this is going to go on the bottom stringers. And you'll see that it is a kind of a C-channel here where it has an open side and a closed side. And you'll also notice that there's 4 different locations that you can mount it on the rail. And we're going to go through and mount it in one of the 2 center ones. So I'll slide it in place. It'll go on the bolt holes that are closest to one end. The closed end is also going to go toward that end. And I'll simply line these up and then put the bolts in from the side. This is going to support the processor plate. And we'll do the same thing on this. We'll leave these finger tight and finally tighten everything once we have it down and onto the ground. Make sure to install the lock washers and the nuts. I've taken the stand and set it on the floor, and this is still upside down. The floor is pretty level, and it helps me to square this up. And now that it is on the ground, I'm going to go through and tighten these up a little more. Still finger tight, but really kind of snug them down. And the reason I want to do that is that when I go to set the machine on, I want the holes to line up exactly with the bottom of the machine. So I'll snug these down. It'll still have a little bit of play. I'm going to go ahead and put the leveling feet in the bottom, the wheel kit, and then I'll flip it over. Now I'll install the casters first, and you'll see that these are nice heavy-duty wheel. They're full swiveling with bearings. We're going to install those right into the holes. These holes are already tapped. Now these holes are tapped and then they're painted or powder coated, and so sometimes you'll have that paint in the threads, and you may find that they're a little bit difficult going in. Sometimes I'll put a drop of oil on the threads inside. If you have a tap, you may want to go through and chase it if you've got the paint or powder coating on the inside, but sometimes just a drop of oil will let me thread those in pretty good. You'll also want to have a 3/4 inch wrench to tighten those down, and you'll run these right down to that plate. I'll get these started. It's pretty snug, but they go right in with the wrench. Repeat this on all 4 corners. Now that the wheels are installed, we're going to install the leveling feet. These are nice heavy-duty leveling foot. There's a captured nut that's part of the foot, and then there's a jam nut that you can use when you level off the machine in your shop. If you level the machine, you'll raise it up to where the casters aren't allowing the machine to move, and then you can retract these so it sits down on the wheels and allows you to move the machine. These take either a 9/16 or a 14mm wrench, and they'll thread right into the bottom of the leg assemblies. The same condition applies with the paint in these holes. If you find that it's too tough, you might put a drop of oil in there, or if you need to, you can run a tap through it and tap them. This one seems to be going in pretty smooth. Run these down, level them off, pick a spot, level them off with a tape measure so that they're all level. And I think what I'm going to do is set the height on these ones just to where they're above the wheels, and I'll set them all the same. Next up is this bracket. You'll see it's a little triangular shaped bracket. It'll use the same hardware that we've been using for the rest of the frame with the carriage bolts, the lock washers and nuts. And you'll see that there are some square holes on this short side of the bracket, and that's going to mount directly to the flat side of the machine. Now, since we've installed this crossbar on the bottom, that'll dictate that that's the front of the machine. This will install typically on this, what I would call the left-hand side, or my left-hand side here. And there's a couple of different positions that you can mount it. I like this one that's kind of the number 3 position back. So if I count the holes, there's 1, 2, and this is the 3rd set of holes. That'll position the bracket right here, and it'll allow the dust collection tube to reach to the front, as well as giving it some travel toward the back as well, and that seems to be a pretty good spot. You can move it up and back just based on your own preference, but this seems to be a pretty good spot. Now I'll drop one or two of these bolts in just to start with, and I'll finish it off with two more. I'll put two of those in, line it up, and then just anchor it in place and tighten those down. Now I've got the frame all set. It's a great stand. I've left just enough play in there that I can move it or wiggle it around as I'm lining the machine up in here. The machine is heavy, and so you want to have that amount of play just to line things up to make sure that these bolt holes line up with the machine as you're setting it together. And then finally, once you have the weight of the machine on there, you've got the bolts in place, then tighten up all the rest of the hardware. This is set. I'm going to go ahead and unbox the machine. We'll get ready to put that on top now. The spindle is not mounted to the gantry, and it's already connected by the wire. I like to take this off right now. It's a simple disconnect. Just unthread the connector here and then pull the harness out. And that way you can take this extra weight off of the machine while you're moving the gantry and lifting the machine up. I'll set that on the bench and install it later. Okay, make sure before you lift the machine that you've got all the cardboard and packing materials cleared away. And this will be the front of the machine. These motors here, the dual drive motors, are the rear of the machine. When you set this up on your workbench or on the stand, just pay attention to the orientation. And right now, before you lift the machine up, is a good time to decide how you're going to set the machine up. Are you going to set this up on your own workbench and not use the stand, or are you going to use the optional stand that comes in the accessory bundle? If you do set this up on the stand, you'll need to put the rubber isolation pads on it. If you set this on your workbench, you're going to need to use the feet. If you're setting your machine onto your own workbench and you're not using the optional stand, then you'll use these leveling feet that come in the hardware bag, and you'll thread these into the steel bracket that's on the bottom of the machine. There are two tapped holes in each bracket. You can select either one, it doesn't matter. These thread into there, and once you have the leveling feet set and adjusted to your bench, use the jam nut to secure those in place. If you're setting your machine on the optional work stand, then you'll use the hardware that comes with the stand itself. There are 4 isolation pads that dampen vibration. There are 4 bolts and washers that secure these. And these bolt into the same bracket we talked about earlier. There are holes that are set up in these isolation pads, and the bolt will actually go through the pad, but you have to cut a little X in here. I'll show you that. You'll slice the X. Don't cut all of the rubber away, because you'll need the rubber and the X to hold these bolts in place. Now with that little X punched, you'll put this through the frame, through the bracket. You'll slide this onto it and just leave the bolt even with the bottom so you can set that on the frame and then finally tighten it down later. On the bottom side of the frame, you'll find 4 of these steel brackets. There are 3 holes in each of the brackets. There are 2 small holes that you can thread the leveling feet into if you're going to use this on your workbench. If you're going to mount this to the frame, there's a single large hole in each of the brackets, and the bolt will go down from the top, through the bottom, through the rubber isolation pad, and then down into the frame of the stand. Now that I've made the decision that I'm going to install this on the optional stand, I want to get some help together to move the machine. 2 people can lift this, but ideally you'll have 4 people. You can put 1 person on each corner, lift it by the bottom of the frame, put the leveling feet on there or the rubber pads on it, and finally you'll want to have a 17mm wrench to tighten those bolts down. Now before installing the rubber feet and putting this on the frame, just preload all the washers onto the bolts. Having all the bolts on the stand just finger tight while we're installing the CNC machine on top of it made it a lot easier to install and finally get it bolted down. You can see that it still is racking a little bit, but now that the machine is on there, I can go through, square things up, tighten down all these bolts. So I'll grab the ratchet, tighten down all the bolts. Once I've done with that, I'll go through and raise these leveling feet and get it on the wheels, and that'll make it easy to move the machine around and to do the rest of the assembly. All right, that's the last of about 48 bolts. It's really important to tighten those all down. And again, just the slack that you have when they're loose helps you to fit the machine on. But now you can see that this thing is stiff and it's rigid. And that's a real important quality when it comes to CNC machining. You don't want this machine shaking or vibrating around when you're using it. That'll directly affect the cut quality that you have. Now I'm going to raise up the leveling feet and roll the machine around. Now on to the last one. Now with the leveling feet retracted, you can see how easy it is to move this around your shop. Now with the frame all tightened up and able to move around, it's time to install the gantry. The first step in installing the gantry is to remove the side covers on one side and then the other side. There are 2 screws on the front, 1 on the top, and then the same thing on the opposite end. Let's go ahead and get the screws removed, pull the panels off. With the side covers off, you'll see the mechanism that supports the gantry. You'll see the ball screw, you'll see the linear guides. A couple quick notes. You want to go through and check to make sure that the zerk fitting is tight. If it's loosened up, just take a little wrench and tighten that down. Make sure it's secure, make sure that the end is pointing out so you can get a grease gun on there and lubricate that occasionally. You'll also see the linear guides. Every so often you'll wipe those with a light lubricant as well. Refer to the owner's manual, it'll give you the proper lubricant for the rails. You'll see that there are bolt holes up here that support the gantry and 2 pin locations. On the back side, I'm going to go through and remove that cover, and you'll see that the zerk fitting that is on the bottom here will be on the top on the other side. And then I'll go through and get the gantry ready to install. Now I'm going to prepare the gantry for installation. These end plates are steel. One of them has the motor sticking through it. The other side is just a plain end plate. There are 5 screws that hold it in place. Loosen the screws and pull this end plate, and that'll prepare the gantry for installation. Save these screws. We're going to reinstall this plate once it's on the machine. Okay. Over at the left side of the machine, you'll see the bracket. These location pins are going to go into the 2 holes that are on the side of the support. I'll get those in position. And once those are flat, in the hardware bag, you're going to find 8 of these Allen-headed bolts. I'll install all of them finger tight first, and then I'll tighten them down with an Allen wrench. With the help of a friend, bring the gantry over to the machine. Line up the 2 pins on the opposite side and bring them into the bracket. And get a bolt or 2 started on that right side of the machine. And as those pins get in place, start running the bolts in to the gantry on the left side. The location pins will keep the accuracy of the machine very, very tight and allow the gantry to be in the proper position. And then finally, just make sure that all the bolts for the gantry support bracket and the ones that go into the gantry are tight. And that's it, the gantry is installed. Now we're ready to go through the next steps. With the gantry installed, it's time to secure the cable track. I'll position the cables on the opposite side and start pushing the cable track over. Finally, using an Allen wrench, remove the 2 screws that are pre-installed in the machine. These are little countersunk screws. And you'll notice that there are 2 holes in the cable track. The track itself will ride on top of this aluminum extrusion, and it will line up with the 2 bolt holes. Reinstall the screws to secure the track. Now we install the limit switch or the limit sensor. There are 2 small screws right here on the gantry support. And insert the sensor into the cutout on the gantry upright support. And then line those screws back up and reinstall the screws. Now reinstall the side covers. Now with the covers back on, it's time to pull off the protective film that's over the machine graphics. Those are on there to protect the graphics during shipping. And it makes it look really good with them off. Installing the spindle will involve the 2 location pins that are on the mount, and there are 2 small holes that correspond with those on the spindle itself. Line those up carefully, and that'll square the spindle, and while holding that in place, use an Allen wrench to tighten the screws that are pre-installed in the spindle bracket. Now that the spindle is installed, it's time to connect the wiring. This connector only goes and fits in one way, so you may have to turn it a little bit until it seats into the spindle, and once it's seated in, tighten the lock ring. Now it's time to install this support plate. You'll see that there's one screw in the front and two in the back. This support plate will drop in place. There are 3 screws that are in the hardware bag, and this supports the electrical control cabinet. That includes the variable frequency drive and the drivers for the motion motors. These screws have washers that are with them. Now bring in the electrical cabinet and set it into place in the bracket. Now locate the box that has a picture of a support bracket on it. This will be the support for the controller. The most important part of the assembly instructions that come right in the box, and again this is for the control panel support, the touchscreen controller. Locate the tube, the bracket with 3 holes, and the 3 countersunk screws. I'll start a screw and then assemble those into the upright with an Allen wrench. I've laid out the parts for the touchscreen controller mount, and the nice thing is that this kit is a universal dual monitor mount. Right now we're just going to use one for the touchscreen controller, but if you ever decide to add your tablet or whatever to the mount, you'll have an extra arm. So we're only going to use one of the brackets, one of the arms, and these clamps will be set to the side. You can use those for other projects. We're going to mount this to the bracket that we've already installed on the machine. This is the bracket for the touchscreen controller, and the arm will come off of the top of the bracket. You can put this in many different locations around the machine to suit your shop layout. I'm going to install this up here on the left front, and you'll see that it has the square holes there that match the square holes in the bracket. The carriage bolts that we used earlier for the stand will be used for this bracket. You can line a couple of those up right now, and those will go in with a 10mm wrench on the back side. I've laid out all the parts for the touchscreen controller. Now the first step is to install the upright support. There are 3 holes in the bottom that match up with the 3 holes on the bracket. You'll find 3 screws that have an Allen head on them. Let's go ahead and get the upright bracket installed. I'll preload one of the Allen screws onto an Allen wrench, put it through the hole, and then line up the bracket. First, I'll install one of the wire clips, and this is just a little plastic spring-loaded clip, and it slides down over the post. Once we run the wires from the controller, they'll clip right in here. I can push that out of the way. Next up is the support arm. This uses an Allen head screw on the support arm, and there's a little bolt that is on the top portion of this one, so make sure that that's pointing up as you install it. Slide this over the tube. You may have to loosen the Allen bolt a little bit to get it over the shaft. You can readjust this later. Right now I'm going to get it in position and install it fairly high on the post. Just allows me to work on it easier. I'll clamp it down so that it doesn't move as I'm putting the control panel on. Okay, with that secured, I can articulate the arm And I'll put the touchscreen control panel right here. Let's go ahead and put the bracket on the back of the controller. The KX24 uses a massive 15.1-inch touchscreen controller. It has a protective film on the front that you want to leave on until you're done installing it on the machine. I'm going to put that face down because I have the film on there. I want you to notice that there is a power button right here, and that represents the top of the controller. We're going to install one of the brackets on the back. This tab is going to go toward the top, the same end as the power button. Line that up with the 4 holes that are on the back, and find the 4 short screws that are with the bracket assembly and install those through the bracket onto the back. Now you may find that these ones have so much paint on there that the screws don't fit through there properly. If that happens, just take a small drill bit, like an 11 64, and just ream the paint out of the hole, and these screws will fit properly. Load 1 screw in and put all 4 in place. I like to leave it loose until I get all 4 installed and then tighten them down. Now that the bracket is installed, grab one of the 10mm acorn nuts. This will go over the bolt that goes through the tab on the top, and let's install this onto the bracket. The touchscreen controller will slide over this bracket and we'll put a nut on the top. Let me turn this around and show you that installation. Slide the controller bracket over the clip, and finally install that acorn nut right on the top. And with a 10mm wrench, secure it in place. That's fantastic. Now you can see that this swivels and pivots around and articulates. You may have to tighten up or adjust these to get the tension correct for each of the bracket locations. Now you can swing this around and pre-install a couple of these clips. They go over the rectangular portion of the arm, and these will support the wires that come from the touchscreen controller down to the electrical box. Next up is the dust collection support. Grab the box and pull all the parts out of it. And make sure to get the bracket and the small parts bag. This is the dust collection accessory kit, and it's part of the accessory bundle if you order that with your machine. The KX24 has got great dust collection. Let's show you how this goes together. First of all, I've opened up the hardware bag, and you'll see that there are some bolts. There's 4 bolts, and these have the washers there. So if they're not pre-installed, pre-install those right now. Those will be part of this bracket assembly. And I've got the smaller bolts. There's a number of those here, 8 of them, and these clips. Now, I've pre-installed one of the clips on there. It's a snug fit, and it's supposed to be, so that this holds together real well. Go ahead and preload all of the clips onto the bolts, and you'll use the open side toward the top, and the bolt head will sit in there. These hold tie straps that hold the hose to the overhead arm. These are the nuts for that. These are the nuts to bolt the bracket to the machine, and finally a hose clamp that holds the hose to the dust boot. Let's go ahead and pre-assemble the bracket assembly, and this is going to bolt to the side of the machine and support all of this. Find the heavy metal bracket. The U shape is going to be pointed upwards, and it's going to go on the inside of the bracket with this opening toward the outside of the machine. Locate the 4 long, large bolts, feed those through, and then put those into the bracket to hold it in place. And don't tighten these bolts down yet. This will be tightened down later, but we want to pre-assemble this before installing it on the machine to make it easy on ourselves. Get those started real well. Again, leave them really loose. Now that the bracket is pre-assembled, let's get our 4 bolts to mount this assembly to the machine, along with the 4 nuts that'll go on the inside of the machine frame. Okay, I've laid out the pre-assembled bracket assembly that has the inside bracket and bolts installed, as well as the fasteners to attach it to the machine, and I've got a 10mm wrench and 10mm socket to fasten it to the machine. There are several locations that you can mount this along the side of the machine, and it can be installed on the left-hand side or right-hand side of the machine, depending on your shop layout. I'm going to bolt it to what is the right-hand side of the machine, the same side that I've mounted the controller, but you've got some choices there. I'm going to mount it to the back, that way it's out of the way and it can reach all the way across the table and give you plenty of hose movement. Let's get the bolts preloaded. I'll preload a couple of bolts in here and get a couple of nuts ready to go for the back side, and then install this through the side channel and bolt it in place. Okay, that bracket is firmly installed in place. It's ready to receive the tubing that we'll put in just a few moments. Make sure that this floating bracket is toward the outside and the slot is toward the outside of the machine so you have clearance for the pipe. Now back over at the bench, I'm going to assemble the overhead arm here. I've preloaded the little fasteners here for the tie straps onto the bolts. A real quick tip on those, if you want to put those in one of your bench dog holes or in a gap in a vise, you can start the screw and then just tap them in place with a small hammer or drift pen, something like that. It makes them easier to put in there. It's a tight fit. So let's go ahead and assemble the upright to the cross arm. Try to line up the holes as you do this. And this can be a snug fit. Sometimes the powder coating is a little bit thick. When you install the bolts, put those through from the inside toward the outside. The hose is going to go on the inside. So we'll assemble these this way, and I'll leave the curve side to side so it kind of matches the curve of the hose and the tie strap. I'll install a few of these and then I'll tighten them all down all at the same time. Now take the dust bracket arm, insert it into the bracket that's mounted to the side of the machine, feed it through, hold it in place, and then tighten down the 4 bolts securely. Tighten these down evenly from left to right. Let's install the dust shoe now. Grab this box, lift out the brush or skirt assembly, set that to the side, and settle the package into the side. And you'll find this assembly. This connection is for the hose to slide on. We'll do that in a little bit. This little collar can slide on the spindle, and then finally this assembly will slide onto the spindle. As you're doing your assembly and ready to install the dust shoe, have a look at the bottom of the Z-axis. The original design of this dust shoe had a little more room around it, and the plate at the bottom protruded out. Since we changed this late in production and offered a higher quality dust shoe that has a removable skirt, there was an interference with the plate that was originally installed in the machine. If your machine has a plate that protrudes out, there's 2 different ways to handle it. You should have a replacement plate supplied with your machine. If you don't have it, don't worry. You can take off the original plate, pull it down, and reverse it. It's just 4 screws with an Allen wrench at the bottom of the Z-axis. This assembly attaches the hose, and this part attaches to the spindle. There's a small ring that slides onto the spindle. I'll slide that on first. And this could be positioned anywhere up and down the spindle, and you'll find out and you'll die that in once you have your bits installed. Secondly, the shoe will install up onto that ring. I'll seat it firmly. And then finally, there's an Allen screw right here that will tighten this to the spindle. And you can rotate that and position it anywhere that you need for the type of project that you're doing. One of the great things about this shoe is that it is a two-part assembly. You've got two posts here that line up with rare earth magnets on the body, and that'll hold in place. As you're machining, this should drag across your material and keep the dust within the confines of the dust collection area. And again, with the hose pulling from the top, it'll attach right here. When you're ready to change a bit, you just pull this off. You can do a bit change and put this back on without any tools. Now take the dust hose and slide it over the collar on the machine, but make sure that you install the hose clamp on it first, and fit the hose over the fitting on the dust shoe. Slide it all the way down, get a good fit now, because the machine will be moving back and forth and you don't want this to pop off in the middle of a job. Now with the hose in place, tighten down the clamp. I've repositioned the arm and tightened it back down so that it is pointed more forward on the machine but away from the spindle. And you can adjust this after you've got the tubing installed and before you start making cuts. Feed the hose down through the bracket that's on the side of the machine. You get plenty of this over here. And kind of loosely position the hose. When you install these zip ties, leave them a little bit loose. I'm just going to start them now and just feed my way up. I'm going to leave them loose so I can adjust the hose a little bit before I start the machine. Okay, got the hose hung. And you can position this again anywhere around the machine that makes sense for the type of work that you're doing. With the hose in this position here, it'll cover the entire span of the table. You should be in pretty good position here. Over here at the back of the machine, we have the cable coming through the cable tray here. And we've got this roll of cable. Locate the zip tie that binds the cable into a hoop. Snip that. And then stretch this cable out. If you have the frame assembly, you can feed it under the frame or under the machine. If you have this on a bench, you can just put it underneath the machine and direct it toward the cabinet where you have the cabinet located. At the rear of the rail, there's an open connector that was here when we set the machine up. There's also a matching connector that is in the harness itself. Look for the tab on the large flat face, and that's going to match up with the tab that's on the connector on the harness. Snap those two together. That's ready to go. Once you get these wires routed and connected in the back of the machine, you can start tying them off. You can use zip ties. There's a few holes that are in the frame, and that'll clean up your wiring. But get them installed first and routed the way that you like them for your shop. There are two connectors at the end of this harness. One of them is a round ring with a tightening ring. The other one uses a flat tip screwdriver to tighten it down in the back of the cabinet. On the rear of the cabinet, you'll see that the round port has a cover. You can just simply move that cover out of the way. Insert this plug until it seats. It only fits in one way, and then tighten the ring. The other one slides in into the long connector, the long vertical connector on the back, and it only fits in one way. We'll tighten that down with a screwdriver. There are 3 wiring harnesses that come with the touchscreen controller. Take these out and we'll plug them in one by one. I'm going to start with the easy one. It's very recognizable. This is a standard power cord that looks like one you might find with a personal computer. It has a plug that will insert on the bottom corner. Make sure that's firmly plugged in place. Once I have all these wires run, then I'll clean up the routing in the machine. Right now I'll leave these loose. The next connector that will run is a standard USB connection. There are 3 USB ports on the back of the machine up here, and this can be plugged into any of those. I'll plug it into the lower one to make the top ones more accessible should I ever use those. I'll leave that right there. And then finally, I'll cut the tie strap on the last connector, and this is the information or data wire that goes up to the touchscreen controller. And it's secured with zip ties, and there's also plastic covers that are on the ends of these connectors. I'll take those off, and you'll match up these connectors with the plug that's on the back of the machine. Once that's inserted, tighten the little thumb screws to secure this harness in place. Now we'll route these wires up to the touchscreen controller. When I'm routing the wires up to the touchscreen controller, I'll start with the one that has the largest plug, and that just makes it easy to feed through first. I'll route it up and keep some slack out. Next up will be the USB wire. And again, I'll leave the excess wire down here. These wires are pretty long, but it allows you a number of configurations. So if you're running this on your own workbench, you might have to route the wires further to get to the control cabinet. So now that these are through, I've got one other one. And this will be the power wire that comes up to the back of the touchscreen controller. It uses a small plug. It has its own power cord as well. And again, this is a standard style computer power cord that plugs into the back of this. And then this will plug into the back of the control cabinet. Now that the wires are run, you can start tightening these up in the brackets and sliding them and adjusting them to plug into the machine. In the box with the touchscreen controller, you'll find this right angle connector, and this will fit into the side of the touchscreen controller. And you can tighten down these little thumb screws and then follow up with a screwdriver to make sure that it's secure. That just helps with the wire management. You could plug directly into it, but then your wires would be hanging out the side. Tighten these down with a flat-bladed screwdriver. And then finally, connect a wire to the back of this right angle connector, and then we'll clean up this wiring on the back as soon as we're done. Okay. Now that that's done, we'll route the USB cable up to the side and plug it in. Now I'll go through it and remove any slack on these wires. Finally, once I'm happy with it, I usually like to zip tie these together so that there's no strain on all the cords. The last connector is the power cord that snaps into the side, and again I'll put that in my tie strap as well to keep the strain off. I'll route this back through the wire restraints. And then finally, the power cord will plug into this, into the back of the monitor. Now that all the wires are run, you'll only have one plug to the machine. It's a 110 volt plug, and leave that one out and tidy up the rest of the wires. I'll go ahead and bundle these, get a couple of tie straps, and I'll route them. Just go ahead and clean it up to your satisfaction, and then after that, we'll get the machine running. If you purchase the accessory bundle, it'll come with one of the LED light kits. This comes in a tube, and just simply pop the caps off of the end and pull the light assembly out. There are some instructions for getting that connected. One of the things that you'll see is that the light is held in place by these magnets, and the magnets actually have a little metal bracket. If you're mounting it someplace else, you can take these and peel and stick these metal pieces onto something. We're going to stick this directly to the machine, so I will remove the metal plates to prepare the light, and then back over at the machine we'll get ready to put the light in and to plug it in into the electronics of the machine. To install the light, you'll need a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the screws on the cover box to plug the lamp in. We also want to have power up on the machine so that we can plug in and test the light and make sure that the switch is in the correct position. I've got the machine plugged into 110 volts. I'm ready to turn it on. This will boot up the controller assembly. We'll watch the screen come live. Once the screen comes live, you may see an error on the screen pop up. It's a normal error that if you have the machine off and you haven't homed it, it'll just give you an error. We'll clear that, and then we'll be ready to go to install the lamp. Once the screen is booted up, we'll see that error. I'll come over here and click OK. That means that the controller is live. I can make manual movements now. I'll leave those alone while we're setting up the lamp assembly here. The control for the light is a button right here on the screen, and you press that and it'll turn on and off the lamp once it's installed. Let's go over to the back and open up the cover. On the rear of the gantry is a junction box, and this is where a lot of the wire connections come in. And there's a wire connector in there for the lamp assembly. It's normally tucked inside of the box. If you didn't purchase the lamp assembly, you'll leave that connector inside the box. Remove the 4 screws. There are 2 on top and then 2 at the rear of the cover. With the cover removed, you can see that the box is packed full of the wires where the connectors are. There's some room in the bottom of this. These are low voltage wiring, so you don't have to worry about problems getting shocked. You'll find the connector that is sitting right in the front here. It'll have a blue and brown wire to it. That'll be the same blue and brown wire that is on the lamp assembly. You'll line up the plugs, brown to brown, blue to blue, and then snap that in place. Make sure that that is snapped. Once you've got this connected, you'll feed the wire back in here and just tuck it into the box. There are a couple of small cutouts. There's a cutout on the side for this harness. There's a larger cutout on this side for the harness, and a very small one that feeds right here. Make sure that when you put the cover back on that wire is in the small channel. This wire will feed through the gap over here. And there is a switch on the lamp. I'm going to leave the lamp on the table for a moment while we check the button from the controller to see if it lights the light. If it doesn't, you'll flip the switch into the opposite position. Let me go up and try that now. Up at the controller, you'll see a row of icons in blue. There's one of them that's 4 over, and it says light, and it has a little light bulb symbol on it, and that's the lamp button for the LED. Let's test it real quick. And it turned green, so it knows that I've activated it, but the light didn't light up. I'll turn it off. I'll flip the switch to the opposite position. Now you can see that the lamp illuminates just with the touch of the button on the touch screen. Now that we know that the switch is in the correct position, I'll go through and tuck that wiring in, close up the cover, and install the light on the bottom side of the gantry. The LED lamp will attach with these magnets right to the bottom of the channel that's on the back of the gantry. Once it's installed, you can slide it side to side or any position you need to. Well, now that I've verified the lamp operation, I'm going to go ahead and cut power to the machine just so that the noise drops down and it's good protocol to not be working on a live cabinet. The power switch is right here on the cabinet, and we'll turn that off and it's powered down. Let's go ahead and tuck the wiring in there and get the cover back on. Now with the electrical done, I'm ready to start up the machine, let it boot up, and show some basic movements and how to home the machine. With the screen booted up, the first thing that you'll notice is that there's a little warning, and the warning tells you that the machine hasn't been homed since it was restarted. This is a normal warning. To clear it, you just hit OK. Now that that's cleared out, you can actually make manual movements of the machine. The Y-axis is the long axis, the X is the cross axis, and the Z is up and down. We'll just check real quick that we have good movement on all three axes. That's perfect. Now I'm ready to home the machine. Now is a good time to take this plastic cover off. This is like a little thin film that's put on there for shipping to keep it from scratching. You can see how nice the screen looks now. Before you can run any programs, you want to home the machine, and what homing does is it resets the controller to a known position on the table that's indicated by the sensors. That position is the left front corner. When you hit the home button, the machine will move in all three axes up to that corner and zero itself out. The home button is one of the blue buttons at the top left corner. We'll hit that, we'll see the machine move up to that position. Now the machine is homed. You'll see that the screen is clear. There's no movements indicating that the machine is moving. Now you're ready to use it. You can run programs now or make manual movements, and the machine knows exactly where it is on the table. Now I'm going to test spindle operation before I put the machine to work. I'll first pull the brush skirt off the bottom so I can observe the spindle operation. There are two buttons, one forward and one reverse. You only want to run this machine in the forward direction. Simply touch that button. The spindle will start up, and you'll hear how quiet this is compared to a handheld router. It's really quiet. I can also vary the speed of the spindle just with a touch of a button. I can slow it down, or I can speed it up just with a simple touch of a button. This will go up to 24,000 RPM for the max speed. And then finally, to turn the spindle off, I can do that again with the touch of the button. Now let's show you how to install a bit in the machine. You'll grab two of the spindle wrenches. One of them will fit the collet nut that's on the bottom here. That'll be the large wrench. The other one is a smaller size, and that'll actually fit on the shank of the spindle itself. So that'll hold the spindle. The other one will come in and unlock that collet. This one wasn't very tight because there's nothing in there. When I pull the collet nut off, I'm looking inside for the actual collet itself. I don't see it there, but I see it's in the bottom of the spindle. And I'll pull that out. That's a 1/4-inch collet that's in the machine as it's shipped. This collet will install into the collet nut before it goes into the machine. So here's the little spring collet, and you'll put it into the back side of the nut and then finally push it into place until it snaps and it's retained by the collet nut itself. Now I can install this into the machine. Just thread it loosely onto the spindle. And don't put it up very far, and then the next step will install the bit before it compresses the collet. Install the bit. I like to put those in a fair way onto the shoulder. Tighten it down by hand so that it doesn't move. And then finally, You can adjust it just by loosening it, pulling the bit out a little bit, and finally tighten it in places with the wrenches provided. Make sure that bit is secure so that it doesn't come out or move up and down while the machine is operating. Now that the bit is installed, we'll move the spindle and the gantry back on the machine, and we'll show you how to do a tool touch off. I've removed the dust shoes so we can see the tool touch off procedure a little more clearly. You'll locate the puck assembly. This is a tool touch off puck. It has a plug at the end that'll plug into the back. Let me move the gantry back and over. I'm going to center it over one of the MDF boards. And I'll drop the spindle down a little bit. What we're going to do is we're going to teach the machine where the tip of this tool is. Every tool is a little bit different in terms of its geometry, and the machine needs to know exactly where the tip of that tool is so that it can carve precisely. To do that, we do a tool touch off. This is a grounding plug. We'll place this right on the MDF table. This is a calibrated thickness, and the controller knows that thickness. This plugs into the junction box that's on the back side of the gantry, and it's a grounding apparatus, so when the bit comes down, it'll actually sense this because it grounds out through the machine, and that'll teach it where the thickness is. Now that we have that located directly under the bit, back at the controller, we'll use the tool touch-off function to teach the machine where that tip is. The tool touch-off is accomplished using the auto zero function. It's in the blue row. It says auto zero. Touch that. The machine will lower the bit down very slowly and touch the tool touch-off puck. Once it grounds, it'll go back up and probe a few times to make sure it's precisely set. Once it's calibrated the tip, it'll move it all the way back up to the top. After you do a tool touch off, you want to make sure to unplug and remove the puck from the table so that it doesn't get in the way and get tangled up. The last part of the accessory bundle are the hold-down clamps. Let's go ahead and install these on the table. The hold-down clamps slide into the T-slots that are embedded into the table. You can slide these in place anywhere along the 5 T-slots. Bring your workpiece in place. And then arrange the clamps in a convenient location. I like the setting for these. And that will securely clamp your material down to the table. That thing's rock solid. It's not going to go anywhere while I'm carving. Now, one quick note, when you're using these styles of clamps, make sure that your tool paths don't interfere with the clamps themselves. So not only will you carve your project, you'll end up carving into your clamps if you're not careful. So make sure that they're outside of the tool path area. This concludes the setup and assembly video for the KX24 CNC machine. The KX24 is available exclusively from authorized Laguna Tools dealers worldwide. You can find them on our dealer locator at lagunatools.com. For machine operation, tech tips, troubleshooting, refer to our Tech Tips videos on the KX24 page at lagunatools.com. Thank you for choosing Laguna Tools.